My son told me I was embarrassing him, right here, in my own $700,000 home. His wife nodded, smirking like they already owned it. My stomach twisted with anger and disbelief. I built this dream brick by brick. They thought they could push me out. But the papers in my desk drawer told a very different story. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. I sat in the living room that evening, the soft hum of the ocean slipping through the half-open window. The air was heavy with salt, yet for me it carried no peace. I stared at the framed picture of Mary, my late wife, sitting above the fireplace. Her smile was faint, captured in a moment when we had nothing but each other and a modest home. I whispered, almost afraid of my own voice, "Mary, do you see this? Do you see what's happening now?" My throat tightened. I remembered every dollar I had sacrificed, every hour of overtime I had taken at the library just to provide for our son, Bradley. I paid $60,000 for his college tuition so he would never start life with a burden. I handed him $25,000 to buy his first Ford Fusion so he would have dignity pulling up to his first job interview. I even borrowed against my retirement savings to cover $30,000 for his wedding reception, where the chandeliers sparkled and the champagne flowed, as if money grew on trees. Back then, I told myself it was worth it. Every father wants his child to have more than he did. Now, as I stared into the quiet house that should have been my sanctuary, all I felt was betrayal. I turned my eyes to the wooden floor beneath me. I had installed it myself, plank by plank, sanding until my hands were raw. The sound of the waves outside mixed with the creak of that floor every time I shifted in my chair. This was not just a house. This was a $650,000 promise I made to myself after Mary passed, a promise that I would finish strong, that I would carve out a piece of peace in my final years. The cottage by the sea was meant to be a symbol of independence, proof that my life had value beyond the shadows of younger, louder voices. Yet now it had become the very prize my own son and his wife, Brooke, were scheming to take away. They looked at this place and saw money, status, and a trophy. They didn't see the long nights I went without heating in winter to save on bills. They didn't see the years I drove an old Chevy with a broken heater so I could stash a few more dollars aside. They only saw the dollar signs. I placed my hand on the arm of the rocking chair Mary loved so much. She used to sit there and read while I brewed coffee in the mornings. That chair was a memory carved into wood, and yet in Brooke's eyes it was just another piece of furniture in her future vacation home. Poor. The more I thought of it, the more the betrayal dug into my chest. Bradley was not just my son. He was the boy I taught to swing a bat in our backyard until the fireflies lit the summer air. I walked him to school with a hand on his shoulder, promising him he would always be safe. I was there for every fever, every scraped knee, every disappointment when life seemed unfair. I remember one night when he was 10, he cried because his classmates mocked him for not having the latest sneakers. The very next morning, I drove to town and spent money I barely had on a pair of Nike Airs, just so he would walk to school with his head held high. I thought that was love. I thought that was what fathers were supposed to do. Now, decades later, I sat here listening to Brooke humiliate me in front of others, treating me like a housekeeper in my own home. And Bradley? He just stood there, lips pressed together, eyes downcast, as if silence made him innocent. That silence wounded me deeper than Brooke's cruelty. It was as if every sacrifice I had ever made had been erased with his refusal to defend me. I felt the shock of it ripple through my body like cold water. At first there had been disbelief. Surely they didn't mean it. Surely this was a misunderstanding. But the evidence had been too clear. The words spoken were too sharp. Brooke's laughter had echoed through these walls like a knife against stone. "This house is ours now," she had said, and Bradley didn't deny it. My heart broke, but something inside me began to harden. Shock shifted into a different fire. I whispered again toward the photo on the wall. If they see me as weak, then it's time to remind them who I am. The weight of those words settled into me. For the first time in years, I felt not only anger, but resolve. I pushed myself up from the chair, knees stiff, but my hands steady. I walked to the small desk near the window where I kept a stack of important papers. The late afternoon light slanted across the desk, illuminating dust that danced in the air. I reached for the folder that held the deed to this house. The paper crackled in my hands as I opened it, reading every line, every clause. My name was there, bold and undeniable. Sole owner, no transfer without my signature. My breath came slower, steadier. They could plan, they could whisper, they could mock me. But without my consent, they had nothing. For the first time since Brooke's cruel words, I felt a sliver of power return. As I traced my finger over my name on the deed, my mind went to Catherine Davis, my lawyer. She had been my ally during the divorce from Haroldine, my ex-wife. Catherine was sharp, relentless, the kind of woman who could find a loophole in a sealed vault. If anyone could help me protect what was mine, it was her. I imagined dialing her number, hearing her calm voice assuring me that this home, this dream, was still safe. My lips curved into a thin smile. The same documents they wanted to twist against me would be the very shield I would use. I closed the folder carefully and pressed my palm against the cool surface of the desk. The grain of the wood felt like stone beneath my skin, grounding me. I knew then that I would not walk quietly into the night. I would not let them erase me. Mary's picture watched from the mantel, and I could almost hear her voice saying, "Stand tall, George, stand tall." My eyes burned, but they were not tears of despair anymore. They were the sharp edge of determination. The house around me seemed to breathe with memories. The afternoon light painted the walls gold, catching the faded family photos. Bradley at 6 years old with ice cream on his face. Mary is laughing at a barbecue, a streak of sunlight across her hair. Even the old rug, worn thin in the center, carried the weight of years lived honestly. Every corner reminded me of what was at stake. This was more than wood and nails. This was my history, my identity, and my final stand. I sat back down, the folder still under my hand. The ocean roared louder outside, as if echoing the storm inside me. I whispered once more, "Mary, this is not the end. Tomorrow I start fighting back." My voice was low, but it carried the promise of action. I knew what had to be done. The evening slipped into dusk, the room darkening around me, but inside me a light had switched on. Shock had turned to anger, anger to resolve. The betrayal of my own blood had scarred me, but it also woke me. They thought I was powerless. They thought I was old, fragile, ready to surrender. They were wrong. The papers in my hand, the memories in these walls, and the fire in my chest told me one truth. The game had just begun. I woke before the gulls and watched the gray slip of dawn crawl across the ceiling. The ocean murmured beyond the windows like a calm old judge, steady and unimpressed by human noise. I brewed coffee and laid the deed on the kitchen table. My name sat there in black ink, firm as a dock post. Sole owner. I said it out loud, 3 times, the way a man checks a knot before he lets the sail catch wind. Sole owner. This house was not a favor. It was the result of years of double shifts, thrift, and stubbornness, and every time I touched the paper, the truth ran up my arm like current. The phone was cold in my hand when I called Catherine Davis. She answered on the second ring, same clipped voice I remembered. I told her what Brooke said, the way Bradley went quiet, and the plan to flood my first day with 22 guests. Catherine didn't scold. She checked the deed, confirmed the title in my name only. "I'll record a homestead today," she said. "No sale or lien without your wet signature. I'll send broker letters and will enroll county title alerts. If anyone files against your place, you'll know." Her calm stacked like bricks. She set notarizing for 11 tomorrow and told me to bring my license. Her sentences tapped the ground under my feet. I wrote every item on a yellow pad and boxed each in pencil. She walked me through the county registry website, the document number for my deed, the date it was posted, and the book and page. She never told me to calm down. She gave me work to do. Before we hung up, she added one more tool, simple but sharp. Enroll your county's title alert, she said. It sends an email if anyone files a claim against your property. It's free. Do that today. I thanked her, and she finished with the same sentence she used when she won my divorce hearing years ago. Stand tall. I dialed Cape and Coast Credit Union next. It was just after 8. I gave my membership number and asked for a hard hold on savings ending in 7284. Balance $220,000, the rep read. Freeze it, I said. He entered the note. Potential elder exploitation, customer requests, full freeze, in-branch withdrawals only with ID. We added two-factor text alerts for any login and a password reset that only I could approve in person. He lowered daily ATM access to 0 and flagged the account for branch manager review. When he finished, he read everything back. Nothing moved without me. The line went quiet in the way a lock sounds when it catches. I walked through the house with my coffee. I pressed my palm to the cool window and felt the ocean on the other side like a living thing. The floorboards I had installed with my own hands shone under a soft rinse of light. I adjusted the framed photo of Mary above the mantel. She smiled that half smile that always meant she was about to say something sensible. I said it for her. Stand tall. I put the deed and my yellow pad in a canvas bag and drove into town. Greta's market still had the brass bell from the 80s. It rang, and Greta came around the counter and squeezed my arm. She already had our order boxed. Seaweed crackers, a smoked tea that tastes like the tide, hard-boiled eggs with dill, lemons, and ice. We kept it simple. She pointed to the bill. I slid my card across. She sighed and let me pay. "You sure about this?" she asked. I was. "Then I'm sure too," she said, and tucked in a jar of local honey for later. At Coastal Rentals, Marshall had envelopes ready, names in black marker you could read in a storm. Harborview Motel on Route 6. Seabreeze Inn, 1 queen left. A fisherman's cottage out on Black Point. A bunk above the bait shop. A campsite with a rental tent. He handed them over, like playing cards. "You want premium?" he joked. I shook my head. "I want honesty." He laughed and wished me luck. Down at the docks, Captain Mike stood with his clipboard, counting heads for the morning run. The harbor rocked under a stiff wind. He hugged me quickly, a clap that said he remembered the year my back went out, and I still showed up to help with the reading fundraiser. 2 o'clock, he said, right when the chop will be honest. He agreed to my small theater with the easy complicity of an old friend. "Ladies and gentlemen," he rehearsed in his outdoor voice, "we're honored to have a special guest naturalist aboard." He winked and put my name on the manifest as if I'd always belonged there. Back at the cottage, I laid out the spread like it was a church basement reception. The seaweed crackers went on a thrift store silver tray I'd polished with toothpaste. The dill eggs sat on Mary's blue plate with the hairline crack only I could find. I brewed a full pitcher of the smoked tea and poured it into a glass carafe so it would look kinder than it would taste. I opened windows, even the sticky one in the small bedroom, and let the salt air comb the rooms. Then I showered, shaved, put on the blue shirt Mary always said made me look like I'd figured something out, and waited. They arrived like a weather front. Chrome and leather, sunglasses and voices that fill rooms whether the rooms ask them to or not. Brooke stepped out first, phone in one hand, a smile in the other. She kissed the air near my cheek, then looked past me as if the house were her stage and she was late for her cue. Bradley trailed, handsome in that careful way that takes a toll. His eyes found mine, then slid away. Behind them came the Westfields, the senior partners, the friends, and the assistant. Luggage thumped. Compliments that weren't questions floated in, glittering and empty. I welcomed them with my old librarian smile. I poured the tea and watched good faces lose the fight with a strange flavor. I passed the envelopes. Paper tore. A partner blinked at the words, "shared bath." "It's charming," I said. Tiffany held the campsite voucher like a dead fish. "Raccoons?" she asked. "Local color," I answered, and kept moving. Brooke took her opening with a bright voice and a hard edge. "We'll sort sleeping later. Bradley and I will take the guest room. Parents in the master. Everyone else, improvise." She turned to me and softened her smile. "Dad, just keep the bathroom spotless and keep drinks coming. Treat it like a small event. You know, staff." The word hit like a flat hand. I kept my voice level. "I'll take care of my home," I said. "Clear enough. If you're still watching and find this story interesting, please comment 1 below to let me know you're here with me." We moved to the deck. The sun on water can make even sharp people soften. I talked about horseshoe crabs and the age of the tide pools, and someone asked a real question, and for a moment we were all just human beings trying to learn something none of us knew. Then I told them we had a boat to catch at 2. Brooke blinked like a camera flash. "Boat?" she said. "Whales," I said. "Educational." I said it the way I might have said dentist or church. She tried to argue with the wind. The wind won. On the path to the dock, expensive shoes met sand and learned humility. Captain Mike boomed a greeting. We pushed off into Honest Chop. He introduced me as a guest naturalist, and I spoke in a steady voice about baleen, krill, and why the ocean smells like work. People nodded, then gripped the rails. The wind wrote its own lesson. A partner went pale. Tiffany stared at the horizon like it owed her money, and Brooke vanished below deck for long minutes. I cut the talk short, signaled to Mike, and we turned back early. Education had done all it could. Onshore, legs wobbled, faces softened, and a few people said, "Thank you," like the word was new. We turned back early because there is a fine line between education and mutiny. At the dock, the land rocked under our feet for a minute, and then remembered how to be still. Back at the house, I set out something warm and comforting on the stove, real coffee in the pot, and a bowl of marshmallows that asked nothing from anyone. I set driftwood in a circle on the sand for later, and tucked blankets where hands could find them once the sun dropped. The people who chose to stay earned my attention. The people who left to hunt for reservations or cell signal earned what they found. Before the light softened, Brooke tried one more performance in the doorway by the sliding glass. Her voice carried just enough to reach the people closest, not enough to sound like a scene. "If certain people understood what's at stake," she said, eyes on the horizon, "this would be easier. Bradley's career isn't a game." I stirred the chili and kept my voice steady. "Then let the work speak," I said. "If folks want the real cape, it's right here." She looked at me like I had missed the point. Maybe I had missed hers. I had not missed mine. We built the fire anyway. The wind dropped. The stars came early as if they were eager for company. The Westfields leaned back on the logs with their hands around their mugs and let their shoulders fall to their natural height. One of the partners laughed like a boy. Bradley roasted a marshmallow and burned it, then tried again with the patience I remembered from the small backyard in Quincy when he was 8 and I was teaching him to throw a baseball without aiming his whole body at the ground. He looked at me and smiled in a way I hadn't seen in years. It was small. It was real. I told a ghost story because the Cape knows 1,000 and because stories are a way to move people without making them feel pushed. The lightkeeper's daughter, the strange weather, the night the bell rang when there was no ship. Folks listened the way people listen when they think they're just being entertained and then realize they've been taught something about loyalty and warning bells. We sang a little. Not loudly, not well, but honestly. Brooke left early with a headache. Pride is a tender organ, easily bruised. I didn't chase her. When the last cup was rinsed and the last log ashed, Bradley stayed behind. He carried chairs without being asked and stacked them quietly. He didn't apologize, and I didn't demand it. He said finally, in a voice that tried to be casual and didn't quite make it, "I didn't know you knew the captain." I said, "There's a lot you don't know." And I kept my tone soft on purpose. He nodded like a student who has just realized the class is harder than the syllabus, then hugged me in that quick, awkward way adult sons do when they remember how much they needed you once. And go. Inside, I spread Catherine's documents on the desk and read every line again. A declaration of homestead with my name and my parcel, and a legal description that sounded like poetry to a tired man. Beginning at the stake by the seawall, thence running easterly 52 feet, more or less. Her letter to any future broker with words sharp as a nail, no conveyance or encumbrance without the undersigned's wet signature, verified in person. A limited agency authorization allowing her to slam doors if someone tried one while my back was turned. I set a pen where she'd put the yellow flags, but I hadn't signed yet. I wanted the notary stamp to kiss the paper while my hands were steady. The phone buzzed with the new alert. Unsuccessful login at 9:41 p.m. I stared at the digits like they were animals outside my fence. I felt anger, yes, but it was clean. It didn't bite me. The hold was in place. The locks were good. For once in a long time, my anger wasn't shapeless. It had direction. It had work to do. Morning came clear and bright, the kind of blue that makes even bad decisions look forgivable. I made eggs for the ones still here and poured real coffee, the kind with a smell that can rescue a person. People thanked me with the careful gratitude of guests who have been surprised by their own behavior. The Westfields said they would stop by before driving back to Boston. "Most genuine weekend we've had in years," Diana said at the door, and the sentence warmed the house. Brooke arrived late, immaculate again, her smile ironed back to perfection. She called a quick team huddle on the deck and directed captions and angles for photos as if the camera could fix what the heart refuses. After the performance, she pulled me aside near the sliding door, same stage as yesterday. "You're hurting Bradley," she said softly. "He needs these people impressed." Her voice felt like a finger on my collar. I breathed and let the ocean answer for me in my chest. "If they want substance, they'll find it," I said. "If they want a show, they have plenty of those." At 10:30, I drove into town with the folder on the seat and the window cracked for salt air. Catherine's office sits above a bakery. The whole stairwell smells like butter. She reviewed each page, then notarized with quick stamps. Homestead, a letter to any broker, and a limited agency authorization so she could slam doors if needed. She slid a slim blue folder across the desk. Certified copies, a checklist, and one sentence in plain English. Paper first, feelings later. I signed where she flagged, and she looked me in the eye. "Stand tall," she said. I nodded and did. I left with the blue folder under my arm and the feeling that a man gets when his tools are oiled and his truck starts on the first turn. Outside, the harbor flashed like coins tossed from a balcony. I stood at the top of the bakery stairs and watched a small fishing boat head out, low in the water, more work ahead than behind. The phone buzzed again. Another failed login. I smiled. Let them try doors all day. They would find wood and deadbolts. Back at the cottage, the driveway yawned empty. The house was quiet the way a church is quiet on a weekday afternoon. I set the blue folder on the table where the morning light collects and walked room to room, checking the small things, the way men my age do when we can't control the big ones. Window latches, stove knobs, the slider lock. I watered the plant on the sill that Mary used to scold me about forgetting. I straightened the afghan she knitted in the winter. She beat the flu with tea and patience. I felt the old life and the new one overlap, like two waves meeting mid-tide, not fighting, just passing through each other on their way somewhere true. Around noon, Bradley came alone. He knocked even though the door was open. He looked tired, in the way a person looks tired when they've been pretending to be someone else for a day too long. He didn't ask to come in. He just stood on the step and said, "Dad, can we talk later?" I said we could. He said thank you like a kid trying on manners that still fit. I didn't reach for him. I let the space be there and didn't fill it with more talking. The Westfields stopped by 10 minutes after Bradley left. They carried their overnight bags and something I couldn't read. Respect, maybe? Relief? Diana hugged me like we'd known each other longer than a weekend. Jonathan shook my hand and held it for an extra second. "We prefer people who know where they stand," he said. He didn't need to add the rest. I walked them to the car and stood in the drive until they turned at the stop sign toward Boston and whatever would come of all this. The wind off the water lifted my shirt and cooled the small sweat on my chest. It felt like permission. Inside, I made one more pass through the papers and slid them back into the blue folder. I added a note in my own hand on top. Lock, hold, alert. I tucked the folder into the bottom drawer of the desk, the one that sticks unless you pull it straight. Then I stood in the center of the room and listened. The house answered with the small noises of a place that has accepted you, the soft tick of cooling glass, a lazy hinge settling, the distant hush of waves turning themselves over and over because that is what they were made to do. I walked to the mantel and rested my fingers on Mary's frame. "You were right," I said softly. "Stand tall." My voice didn't shake. It didn't need to. The path in front of me was narrow, but it was mine. There would be more to do. There would be conversations and documents and maybe a courtroom that smelled like old wood and old grudges. But I was no longer standing in my own kitchen waiting to be told what my home was for. Tomorrow I would place those certified copies on Catherine's desk, sign a form, and watch the clerk stamp a number that locked my door twice over. A click the whole room would hear, whether they admitted it or not. They think I only know how to be quiet, but step by step I am pulling their masks down, and the next step would land at 11 tomorrow, beneath Catherine's notary stamp, with my name steady and the ocean breathing in and out beyond the window, patient as judgment, strong as truth. The morning after the bonfire came bright and clean. Wind cleared the smoke from the yard. The ocean breathed beyond the dune. I brewed coffee, opened the blue folder Catherine gave me, and set it in the middle of the kitchen table. The Homestead Declaration lay on top. Below it, her letter to any broker who might try something cute. Under that, certified copies of my deed, book, and page are highlighted in red. I touched each page once and waited. The doorbell rang at 9. Brooke arrived in a white blazer, sunglasses pushed up like a crown. Bradley trailed a half step behind, hands in pockets. The Westfields came too, not with the crowd from yesterday, just them and 2 senior partners. The living room was filled with voices. I poured coffee. Brooke started before anyone sat. "We need to reset," she said briskly. "Last night was unexpected. We have a second chance this morning to make the right impression." She looked at me like I was a misbehaving stagehand. "I've invited everyone back to the Coastal Club for brunch. Formal. Bradley will speak. Mr. Westfield will say a few words. We'll get the photographs we need." I didn't answer. Jonathan Westfield cleared his throat. "We're here because we wanted to stop by and thank your father for last night," he said to Brooke, then looked at me and nodded. It was refreshing, honest. If you're still watching and find this story interesting, please comment 2 below to let me know you're here with me. Brooke smiled, but her eyes didn't. "Of course," she said, "but today should look different." She turned to me, dropped the smile, and let the room hear the edge. "You made a mess of things," she said. "You embarrassed Bradley. You embarrassed all of us. This isn't a campfire story hour. This is business." The words landed heavily. I kept my voice level. "If anyone is embarrassed," I said, slow so no one missed it, "it isn't me." A partner shifted on the couch. The room held its breath. Brooke stepped closer and pointed at the blue folder. "What is that? More props? You're not helping. You're hurting. This family fails because of you." Bradley looked at his shoes. His silence hit me harder than any sentence. I looked at him anyway. I would not talk to a corner of the room. Jonathan spoke before I did. "Mrs. Sullivan," he said, polite and firm, "we aren't interested in photographs today. We're interested in character. Your father showed us that last night." Brooke pivoted, voice rising. "Character? He put you in a motel. He fed you seaweed. He dragged you onto a boat in choppy water. That's not character. That's sabotage." Diana Westfield lifted a hand. "It's character to honor your own boundaries," she said. "It's character to mean what you say in your own home." I opened the blue folder. I laid the homestead on the coffee table. The notary seal shone. I set Catherine's broker letter beside it. Then I placed the certified deed with the book, and the page circled. The pages made a paper sound that told its own truth. "I'm going to say this once," I told the room. "This house is mine, $650,000 of mine, paid for with a librarian's salary and a lot of double shifts. There is no sale. There will be no sale." Brooke laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Who said anything about selling? Don't be dramatic." I slid my phone across the table. A screenshot glowed, an email thread with a subject line every homeowner recognizes: exclusive listing opportunity. A friendly note from a boutique broker in Boston, copied to Brooke's assistant. A proposed walkthrough time. A draft listing blurb that called my cottage a teardown with priceless views. The timestamp was last night, 9:41 p.m., the same minute my bank alert had pinged. No one spoke for a count of 5. Then Brooke moved to anger the way some people move to music. "That's not what it looks like," she said. "We were just exploring options. It's normal, due diligence." "It's not normal in my house," I said. "Bradley needs to think about partnership," she snapped. "A bigger place in the city, liquidity. There are grown-up decisions to make." I reached into the folder and pulled the last document, the one Catherine drafted, because she knows the way the world is. A notice of representation and cease addressed to the broker by name. It cited my deed and the homestead, warned of tortious interference, and instructed them to knock it off. Catherine's signature sat on the line like a tiny hammer. "This went out at 8 this morning," I said. "Certified." A partner coughed. The Westfields did not bother to hide their approval. Bradley finally looked up at me. His expression was a mixture of shame and something like awe. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Brooke's voice went cold. "You think a few stamps and a printout can stop the world," she said. "You can't freeze a life. You can't freeze business." "You can freeze a savings account," I said. $220,000. I did it yesterday. In-person withdrawals only, with ID. She blinked. The partners looked at Bradley. Jonathan leaned forward and spoke to him like a mentor who had decided to be honest. "Young man," he said, "the nicest restaurant in the world can't fix what character breaks. Your father did not humiliate you. He told the truth when it counted." The room shifted onto a new axis. Brooke felt it. "You can't do this to him," she said to me, low and sharp. "You can't make him look small." "I'm not," I answered. "I'm reminding him he's bigger than this." Her eyes flashed. "This family fails because of you," she repeated, louder now, finger out. She wanted it to hurt. It did. I felt Mary in the room beside me, not to soothe, but to steady. I looked at Brooke the way you look at a storm. You note its shape. You do not invite it to sit. For years, I said, I let people tell me who I was and what I should do with what I earned. That's done. Bradley finally found his voice. It wasn't loud. It was clear. "Brooke," he said, "enough." She turned as if he had whistled in church. "Enough?" she said. He nodded. The old apology drained from his shoulders. "Mr. and Mrs. Westfield," he said. "If I've mishandled this weekend, that's on me, not my father. He has been more gracious than I deserved. I'm proud of him." Jonathan stood. Diana rose with him. "We appreciate your candor," he said. "We'll be in touch next week about the Boston property, with a revised scope, one that centers community rather than optics." He looked at me. "If you're willing, we'd like your informal input." I nodded. Brooke watched the account she had tried to open drain itself. She went through the stages fast: denial, bargaining, blame. You came here for me, she told the Westfields. For the firm, for Bradley. Don't let him derail this. We came here to understand, Diana said gently. Now we do. Brooke pointed at the documents. This is ridiculous, she said. You can't hide behind papers. I slid Catherine's letter back into the folder. These aren't hiding places, I said. They're guardrails. She laughed again. What's next? You going to take us to court? If you force my hand, I answered, I'll use it. The partners stood. They mumbled their goodbyes and left. The Westfields shook my hand and Bradley's and asked for a quick word in private by the door. I gave them space. In the kitchen, I rinsed 2 cups that no one had used and set them to dry. Water hissed in the sink. I breathed through the rhythm like a man who has finally found a pace he can keep. Brooke followed me in. The anger had cooled into something heavier. You think you've won, she said. You haven't. You've humiliated your son. You've ruined every plan I made. You've shown everyone you'd rather cling to wood and salt than see your family succeed. I'd rather keep my word to my wife, I said. Her face flickered. Mary is gone, she said. This is now. I'm still here, I said, and this is home. She stood very still. We'll see, she said, softer than before, and left the kitchen with her back straight. Jonathan and Diana stepped out into the sun with Bradley. I walked them to the drive. We stood by the mailbox, and they thanked me again for the bonfire, the stories, the honesty. Diana pressed a card into my hand. On the back, a direct number. If anything becomes difficult, she said, call us. When their car pulled away, the silence that fell was not empty. It was the pause after a chord resolves. I went back inside and found Bradley by the mantel, looking at Mary's picture. He didn't speak for a moment. Then he said, almost to the glass, I'm sorry, Dad. I set it gently on the table between us. What for? I asked. For not stopping it sooner, he said, for letting her speak to you like that, for forgetting who you are. Remember now, I said. He nodded. What do you need me to do? Mean what you say, I told him. That's all. He left to pack. I closed the blue folder and carried it to the desk. I slid it into the bottom drawer. The house rested around me. I could hear the ocean count itself. I sat at the table and wrote 3 sentences on a note card. Homestead recorded, broker warned, funds safe. I propped the card against the sugar bowl. At noon, my phone buzzed. Catherine. The broker responded, she said. Their counsel acknowledged receipt. They're backing off. I've also filed your homestead with the registry. Book and page will post later today. We'll get the stamped copy tomorrow. How'd your morning go? It was loud, I said, and then it was quiet. The right people heard the right things. Good, she said. Guard your rest as fiercely as your rights. After the call, I stepped outside. The air still smelled of cedar from last night's fire. I walked the edge of the yard and checked the gate latch the way Mary always did. Habit is a kind of prayer. On the porch rail, the Westfields card lay where Diana had set it, held down by a shell. I put the card in my wallet and the shell in my pocket. Small anchors matter on days like this. The phone rang again. Jonathan, this time. Highway noise in the background, Diana's low voice beside him. One practical note, he said. We're moving the Boston rollout. No photo op. We'll fund a neighborhood legal clinic instead of a glam dinner. That came out of last night. Thought you should know. I told him it meant more than he realized. He laughed softly. We realized plenty. It takes nerve to draw a line on your own floor. Diana added, the right people remember who drew it. When we hung up, I wrote the clinic idea on my note card under the 3 lines Catherine had blessed. Homestead recorded. Broker warned. Funds safe. Community first. I taped the card inside the cabinet door where Mary kept recipes. The tape made a small crackle. I closed the door and rested my palm against the wood. We're still the same kind of people, I told her. Even now. I brewed more coffee and sat in the quiet to let my pulse settle. The house had its own slow heart. I thought about the next steps with Catherine, updating my will, adding a letter to future brokers, and asking the bank to require an in-person override for any change of address. None of it is dramatic, all of it steady. I thanked her. After we hung up, I stood by the slider and watched the tide ease toward slack. I made a sandwich. I cleaned the counter again. Around 1, Brooke came back in from the deck. The Westfields had left. The partners, too. Her phone was in her hand, but she wasn't looking at it. She stood by the table and stared at the blue folder. She spoke without preamble. "You embarrassed me." "No," I said. "You did that work yourself." "I did what I had to do," she said. "For Bradley's career. For our future." "You tried to spend what wasn't yours," I said. "You tried to spend me." Her eyes flashed again, then dulled. "You're impossible," she said. "You're stuck in memories, in vows that no one keeps anymore." "I keep mine," I said. She looked toward the hallway where Bradley was zipping a bag. Her voice dropped. "You'll turn him against me." "You can stand with him," I said. "No one is moving him but himself." She laughed, but there was no air in it. "You sound proud," she said, almost curious. "After everything." "I am," I said simply. She turned away, then turned back. "We could have made it easy," she said. "One signature, one listing, a check that changes everything." I looked at the floor we had installed, board by board, at the knot Mary had insisted we leave visible. "Checks don't change everything," I said. "They often change nothing important." Footsteps in the hall. Bradley came to the doorway with his bag. He looked at Brooke, then at me. He made a choice. "We're heading back to Boston," he said. "I'll call you tonight, Dad." "I'll be here," I said. Brooke walked past me without another word. At the door, she paused and said, "Enjoy your little house. Enjoy your small life." The words should have been cut. They did not. The ocean breathed. The blue folder waited in the drawer like a spine. I did not follow them out. The afternoon leaned into itself. I swept sand I had already swept. I fixed the sticky window. I wrote thank you notes on postcards from Greta's counter. I took the long way to the mailbox so I could hear my feet in the gravel. Near 5, my phone buzzed again. A number I didn't know. The boutique broker. The voice was warm butter. "Mr. Sullivan, just touching base regarding the listing possibility Brooke mentioned. If you're open—" "I am not," I said. A pause, then a practiced chuckle. "Of course, if you change your mind—" "I won't," I said. "Cease. That letter stands." Another pause. "Understood," the voice said. "We wish you all the best." "You too," I said. I sat at the table when the light went gold and wrote Mary a note on the back of an old photo. I told her what the Westfields said. I told her what Bradley said. I told her I had not raised my voice. I told her I had stood tall. I propped the photo by the salt. I felt tired, but in the way a finished chore makes a person tired. Clean. At dusk, Bradley texted, "Home? Call tomorrow?" I typed, "Yes, proud of you." I set the phone face down and listened to the house settle into the night. From the porch, I could see the lighthouse blink its code. That should have been the end of it, but the doorbell rang once more. When I opened the door, Brooke stood there alone. Her eyes were rimmed red, but her mouth was set. She did not ask to come in. She stared past me at the blue folder on the table. "I don't lose," she said. "Not like this." "You don't have to," I said. "You can choose a different win." "You don't understand the world I live in," she said. "I understand the one I'm willing to live in," I said. She steadied herself and went for the throat. "Sign a temporary power of attorney for the house," she said. "Just 90 days. Let me handle the listing quietly. You keep a peace. Bradley gets a partner." If you're still watching and find this story interesting, please comment 3 below to let me know you're here with me. I opened the drawer, took out Catherine's letter, and laid it on the table between us again. "No," I said. "This conversation is over." Her hands shook. "I'll make sure he never—" "Stop," I said, and held up a palm. "Don't finish that sentence." She did stop. The room went still. She turned on her heel and left. I locked the door and leaned my forehead against the glass for a moment. Then I laughed, one short bark. I stacked the papers in the blue folder and put them away. The day ended without fireworks. No judge, no bailiff, no gavel. The victory was quiet and exact. Paper, postmark, voice, boundary. It felt like justice because it was not loud. It was right. Truly. I made tea and watched the last line of light slip off the water. I said it softly to the empty room so the words would know where they belonged. They thought I was weak. Now they see the cost. I'll sleep tonight, finally free. Justice isn't done here. The last round remains, and I am ready for it. That ache of being dismissed, of being treated as an obstacle in your own home, it's heavy, isn't it? If you believe every person deserves to be seen and respected, comment the word justice. Now watch what they do to change it. I sat at my kitchen table the morning after the storm, the blue folder still in front of me, and I realized the battle was no longer about defending what was mine. It was about finishing this chapter in a way that left no crack for anyone to slip through again. Catherine, my lawyer, called me at 9 sharp. Her voice carried the calm weight of someone who had seen hundreds of family disputes rise and fall. "It's all done," she said. "The homestead is filed, the deed is recorded in your name alone, and the savings account is frozen against outside withdrawal. $220,000 secure. No one can move it but you." I thanked her, and after we hung up, I sat in silence for a long while. The old clock ticked on the wall. My hands rested flat on the table, one on each side of that folder. For the first time in months, my shoulders weren't carrying the weight of fear. I walked out onto the porch and let the morning salt air sting my face. The house stood firm behind me, its shingles weathered but proud, its porch boards creaking under my weight. $650,000, the broker had called it, a teardown with priceless views. To me, it was 30 years of labor, every tax return carefully saved, every splinter from wood I cut with my own hands. It was Mary's laughter echoing down the hall, the rocking chair where she nursed Bradley as a baby, the hand-sewn curtains she hung one spring when she wanted color in every window. It wasn't torn down. It was the monument to a life lived honestly, and now the law recognized what my heart already knew. It was untouchable. But a victory without meaning is just paper, and I wanted more than that. That afternoon, I drove into town, walked into the Cape Bank where Mary and I once signed our first mortgage, and sat with a young officer who barely looked old enough to shave. I slid a check across the table. $50,000, I said. I want it moved into a new account under the Sullivan Scholarship Fund, for kids around here who can't afford college, in Mary's name. His eyes widened. He asked me if I was sure. I told him I'd never been more sure. The money was not a loss. It was the purest gain, a way of turning pain into something that would last longer than any house or account. As I signed the paperwork, I felt Mary's presence settle around me like a shawl. For once, giving did not feel like a sacrifice. It felt like freedom. Brooke called that evening. Her number glowed on the screen, and for a long minute I thought about letting it ring out. But curiosity made me swipe. Her voice was thinner than I had ever heard it, stripped of the arrogance that once carried every word. "I'm sorry," she said quickly before I could speak. "I was wrong. I went too far. I should have respected you. Bradley and I cut her off. "Brooke, I don't need your apology." Silence spread between us. I let it stay until the weight pressed heavily. "I need respect. Respect you never gave me. Words don't mean anything without it." She tried again, but I ended the call. The sound of the disconnect felt like a clean cut on a wound that had festered too long. I placed the phone face down on the table and whispered, "Mary, I think you'd be proud of me tonight." Later, Bradley came by. He looked worn, like a man who had wrestled with himself and lost. His eyes were red, his shoulders slumped. He stood in the doorway a long moment before stepping in. "Dad," he said, voice breaking, "I don't know how to fix this. I can't believe I let it get this far. I need another chance." I studied him the way I used to study his batting stance when he was 12, looking for the flaw, the thing that would cost him the game. My chest ached, not with anger anymore, but with something deeper, a mix of sorrow and love. "Bradley," I said softly, "I'm not shutting the door on you. But from now on, it's action that matters, not talk. Show me who you are, not to her, not to the world, but to yourself. That's the only way back." He nodded, tears slipping down his face. I didn't step forward to hug him, and he didn't ask me to. We both knew the line had to be drawn. In the days that followed, the house became a sanctuary again. I woke to the sound of waves, steady and eternal. I brewed coffee, carried a book to the porch, and read with the morning sun warming my knees. The rocking chair creaked under me, the same chair Mary had loved, and I realized that quiet was not empty. It was full. It held the echo of children's laughter, the whisper of a wife's voice, and now the dignity of survival. Each night I locked the doors, not from fear, but from habit, and each morning I opened the curtains wide to let in light I had once taken for granted. Brooke's world crumbled in small ways I did not need to witness directly. Word in town was that she and Bradley moved into a rented apartment in Boston after the Westfields cut ties. She lost her consulting clients. The social invitations dried up. When I passed through town, I sometimes saw her name mentioned in whispers, but never with respect. Bradley still called once a week, his voice steadier now, stripped of excuses. He spoke about work, about trying to rebuild his reputation, about how he was learning to stand without leaning on someone else's schemes. I listened, I gave short answers, and I left the rest to time. One evening, as I watched the tide roll in, I thought about the strange gift betrayal had given me. It stripped away illusion. It taught me the price of unconditional sacrifice. It showed me that love without boundaries is not love. It is a leash. I realized something simple and sharp. Parents must not erase themselves in the name of family. Children must not let greed blind them to gratitude. And in this modern world where money shouts louder than truth, character remains the only inheritance that cannot be stolen. I whispered it aloud to the waves as if they could carry it further than my voice could reach. I don't need them anymore. I have myself, and that is enough. The final cord of bitterness loosened inside me. I had not only defended my home and my savings, but I had also defended my dignity. I did not live in fear of betrayal anymore. I lived in the knowledge that no one, not even my own blood, could take what I refused to surrender. Weeks later, I walked into the Cape Cod Community Center, signed my name on a volunteer sheet, and joined a small group that cooked meals for elderly neighbors who had no family nearby. They welcomed me not as a client, not as a burden, but as one of them. I carried boxes, washed dishes, and told stories over steaming plates. For the first time in a long time, I felt useful in a way that had nothing to do with money. That night, I sat on my porch, the sound of the sea steady as a heartbeat, and I thought about how endings are never really endings. They are doors we only notice once they open. I leaned back, looked at the stars, and spoke again to Mary, because old habits die last. You see, love, I'm still here, still standing, and I've finally learned the lesson I should have known long ago. For parents, never give away every piece of yourself in sacrifice. Keep boundaries. Keep dignity. For children, never mistake generosity for weakness, and never let hunger for wealth blind you to the gift of love. For every person in this modern, rushing world, remember, character is the only treasure no thief can touch. I let the silence take my words and turn them into something larger. Tomorrow, I will meet the group at the community center again. Tomorrow, I would carry one more box, shake one more hand, and start building a life that looked forward instead of back. And for the first time in years, I knew peace. I spend my mornings differently now. Instead of waking with the weight of dread on my chest, I rise early, make a simple breakfast, and step out onto the balcony of my small apartment in town. The sun spills across the rooftops, and the air is filled with the hum of a community already moving. This place cost me $200,000, but the real price was measured in courage, not in money. I still keep the beach house, a retreat when I need the sea's steady voice, but this new home is where my days begin. From here, I can walk to the library, to the community center, and to the park where I often sit among strangers who, slowly, have become friends. A few afternoons each week, I read to children at the local library. I hold the books with worn covers, the kind Mary used to read to Bradley when he was little, and I let my voice roll across the room. The children lean in, their eyes wide, and for a while I forget the bitterness of betrayal. Their laughter is not tainted by greed, their questions are innocent, and their trust is pure. Each time I close a storybook, I feel I've given something honest and small back to the world. And the truth is, it fills me in ways I never imagined. The apartment itself is modest. A living room just big enough for a couch and a chair, a bedroom that holds a simple bed, and a desk where I keep a single photograph of Mary. On the desk sits my father's old pocket watch, its face scratched but still ticking after decades. I often rest my hand on it when I need to remind myself that some things endure beyond money, beyond betrayal, beyond disappointment. Every day in this space I find that peace is not built by square footage or price tags, but by honesty. Not long ago, a letter came in the mail. The envelope was familiar, the handwriting rushed. Brooke again. Her words were softer this time, less defensive, almost pleading. She spoke of regret, of wanting to mend the wound she had carved. I read it once, then again, and finally folded it carefully. I placed it in the drawer of my desk, beneath the watch, and closed it without answering. My heart did not harden, it simply rested. "I don't need their apology," I whispered. "I don't need their approval. I have my life, and it is enough." That was the moment I knew the cord had truly been cut. Bradley still tries, and I let him. He calls sometimes, shorter conversations now, about work or about the weather. I don't turn him away, but I also don't let him back in without proof. He must show me with actions, not promises. That boundary is firm, and it protects both of us. For the first time, I feel like I am guiding him as a man, not saving him as a father. Whether he learns or not is up to him. One Saturday, I walked through the town park. Children played tag on the grass, an older couple shared a sandwich on a bench, and a group of teenagers played guitar near the fountain. I sat on the edge of a bench, closed my eyes, and listened. Laughter rippled through the air like music. The smell of cut grass mixed with the sweet aroma of fresh donuts from the vendor by the gate. In that moment I thought, this is where I belong, not in battles, not in bitterness, but here, in life, simple and unbroken. I thought of Mary, as I often do. I thought of the nights I once sat alone, consumed by anger at Brooke's words, at Bradley's silence. Now that anger has burned itself out, leaving only ash. And from that ash something new grows, something steady, like the grass under my feet. I whispered again, though this time not to the sea but to the wind in the park. I have found where I belong. Brooke's life, I hear, is not easy. She and Bradley moved into a rented apartment outside Boston, and though they put on appearances, the truth slips out. She lost her shine, the invitations stopped, and the community that once adored her has turned away. That's not my victory to celebrate, it's simply the natural shadow cast by choices. People reap what they sow. The contrast could not be clearer. While she struggles with a shrinking circle, I am building a new one. At the community center, I've joined a volunteer group that cooks meals for seniors who live alone. We chop vegetables, stir pots, and pack containers. We laugh, we tell stories, we tease each other gently. They don't see me as a victim or as a man who nearly lost everything. They see me as a peer, someone willing to lend his hands and his time. And that fills me more than any account balance ever could. Parents listening to me now might wonder, what lesson is there for us? The lesson is simple. Do not sacrifice every piece of yourself. Love your children, yes, but protect your dignity. Do not hand over your future blindly in the name of family. Love should not erase who you are. It should honor it. Children listening might hear something different. Never let greed drown out gratitude. The parent who built your world does not owe you that world forever. Respect is not optional. It is the currency of the family. Once it is spent, it is hard to earn back. And to all of us, in this modern world where money often drowns out truth, character is the treasure no thief can steal. It is the only inheritance that outlives us all. One small surprise came last week. As I was leaving the library, a boy of maybe 10 ran up and handed me a small drawing. Crayon lines, uneven but full of life, showed a man reading a book to children. "It's you," he said shyly before darting off. I stood there on the steps, holding that drawing, and felt tears well in my eyes. It was nothing, and it was everything. A simple reminder that even when betrayal robs you of one story, life is always ready to hand you another. I brought it home and pinned it above my desk next to Mary's photo. That drawing, crude and bright, is a better inheritance than any dollar amount. It is proof that what I choose to give now comes back, not in betrayal, but in trust. As the chapter of my life closes, I see it clearly. I will never answer Brooke's letters. I will never chase her approval. The door behind me is shut, and the lock is mine to keep. My path stretches forward, lined not with grand victories, but with small, honest joys. Reading stories, cooking meals, walking in the park, and listening to laughter. These are the riches I now count. Every night before turning off the light, I glance at that pocket watch and the folded letter beneath it. The watch still ticks. The letter will stay unanswered. That is all anyone needs to know about where I stand. I have lived through betrayal, through anger, through the breaking of trust. I have reclaimed my dignity, rebuilt my peace, and discovered that living true to myself is the only wealth that endures. And so I end with this truth. Family is not only the blood that runs in your veins. Family is those who see you, respect you, and honor the life you have built. In the end, integrity, respect, and boundaries are the real legacy. And I have chosen to live with them, fully, at last. The story has come to an end. I hope it has brought you valuable lessons and insights. If you enjoyed this content, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next video. Goodbye, and see you again.